React loves Rails. Okay, let's welcome Vipul and Amler.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vipul, and today I'll be speaking about React and how it integrates so well with Rails and how we have been using it for the past year or so. I'm here from India, and that's my Twitter handle if you'd like to check it out. I work for a company called as Big Binary, which is based out of Miami, and I'm kind of a remote worker working out of India. Back in India, I run a newsletter called as Ruby India, which is similar to how Ruby Weekly is, but it focuses mostly on the Indian Ruby content, and it tries to feature a lot of content and a lot of code or projects which come up from India. I also run Ruby India podcast, which is a podcast series specifically for the Indian Ruby community, but I've been traveling a lot since the last year, and we also interview a lot of people and try to understand how they've been using Ruby in their company, or in general how they've been using it. I'm also currently writing a book on React.js, so if you'd like to know more about the book, you can follow me on Twitter. Alright, so my talk has a lot of demos, so hopefully if the net is working fine, I'll be going through with all of those. I'll just hop in right away with those. So, station 1, React. So React, how many of you have heard of React? By the way, it ends with JS. How many of you use React? That's very less. So React got started last year, a year back in 2013. It was released by the team by Facebook, and you can see over here the trends that are there in React. The purple line is somewhere. The purple line that you see is the trends for Rails, Ruby on Rails. It was a bit lot in 2006-07. Then it's been stagnant. The line that you see over here, this is AngularJS. I don't know. It's just been in the news, so maybe people get stuck or what. I don't know. I don't hate Angular, by the way. And this is just the small line. React is just starting. It's very small right now. Which is something that started happening. Like React has started gaining popularity a lot starting this year when the first React conference was held. And it has been adopted in the past year, since 2013, by a lot of companies that we see over here, like Facebook, Instagram. These are the first companies that built React and have been actively using them. So if you're on Facebook, whatever you see right now, lots of the components, like the ticker that you see on the side, your comment box, your status box, all of those are React components. Even the apps that you have, your Facebook apps, the photos that you see in your Facebook app, on your mobile apps, or the Groups app, all of these are built using React. This is something we'll talk about later. And lots of other companies that you see have been adopting React a lot due to a couple of things. Like it's very fast, since it uses something called as virtual DOM. So all the other frameworks, what they try to do is they manipulate the DOM, which is a very, very heavy operation. React doesn't do that. It tries to find out what it needs to render, and it renders on virtual DOM. It keeps a map of the DOM. It builds up its own DOM and just updates. It does very minimal updates for the DOM. So to give you an example of how fast React is, which has been one of the most important aspects of popularity for React, we'll go through a simple demo. So this demo is from the previous React conference. I'm just using it. So what this demo is about it's about a database manager, and what it does is it creates random queries, and it displays those queries. It generates random queries on the fly, and it is going to be displayed in simple rows in our app. So right now I'll just say display number of rows will be 5, and let's see how Ember performs. So you see it's creating these queries randomly. I'll just increase it to 10. That we can see a bit of slack. So that's a bit slower if you notice it from the previous one. Since now it has to perform a lot of operations for updating the DOM. This is how Angular performs. It's relatively faster. And this React for you. I mean it's pretty fast. Let's go ahead and move this from 10 rows to 15 rows. So 15 rows simultaneously being computed in the browser. I'm not going to open Ember because that crashes my Firefox. So really, if I open it, it will crash. Angular loads, but you see it's now a bit slower. And yeah, React is still faster. Let's take it up a notch and see at 100. And now you can see the difference. So now it's very slow, and you can't even see the pop-up that you see, which should be displayed on the query, and how much time it takes. In React, it's still very fast. So it can handle a lot of load, and it's pretty fast, which is pretty amazing if you want to have interactions in your app which are pretty faster. All right. So that's one of the things which is very important, which got React a lot of attention. So I'll be having this talk in 3 parts. First part is going through a brief walkthrough of what React is and how you can start using it. Hopefully after this talk you can go back and start using React directly because it's pretty small. Understanding React is pretty small. React uses something called as MV, which is model, view model, and view. Most of the logic that you see, you can think about model as your active record. Your view model over here and your view, these are composed by React. It takes care of handling of logic for displaying of your data and how you want to manipulate that data and then displaying that data in your view. Also taking care of when there are changes in your data, instantly updating your views. React uses something called as components. So every single piece of your app. So let's say the sidebar or the header or your main app or different small components in your homepage. All of these comprise together as something called as components. So let's take a look at an example for component. Okay. Cool, then it's working. So this is our first very basic React component. You see over there we are using something called as JSX, which we'll take a look at later. We just defined this header over here to say that start using JSX. We define a simple component by using React.create class, and it needs to have just a single function, which is render. And in your render method, you're going to return whatever you want to display from your React component. And how do you display that component? You just say React.render your component name, and where do you want to render it? In this case, it will render on body, but usually you would like to have a node in your HTML. On your document where you want to display your component. So pretty straightforward. You create a simple component using React class. You use render for displaying your content, your HTML content, and then you use render. Next thing is JSX. So the part, if you noticed, let's go back. So the part that you see over here, so we are actually using HTML from within JavaScript. Usually you don't see this a lot. So this is something called as JSX, which is handled internally by React. So whenever you're writing, you'll be writing simple JavaScript, and embedding your small components. It doesn't make sense a lot initially, because why would you like to merge together your HTML and JS? But in the long run, if you think about it, your parts of your page actually it makes more sense to have those compartmentalized into simple components. And having support for this makes it makes it pretty easier to compartmentalize all those components. So you can use any kind of HTML tags. All HTML tags are supported, and you just have all of your view within this particular render method. Even for even for creating this instance, so this is a React component, and you're instantiating that component. You're using J6 tag over here for creating that component. All right. So the next thing is, I'm just going to present from here because I need to go back and forth a lot. The next thing is props. So for passing values to your so your for passing values to your components, for having passing parameters, you use something called as props. So let's say I want to pass my name over here. I'll say, and in your component, it is made available by something called as props or properties, and you access it by saying this props.name. So these are whatever you pass as parameters to your component, and these are meant to be in such a way that you don't manipulate or mutate these values. Because it makes more sense, since they are being passed out from outside of a component, you shouldn't be manipulating these values. And that's something that makes React pretty faster, because your component should not have something which is constantly changing. That is something that is handled by state. So when some values which is coming from outside, it doesn't have any dependency. Your component doesn't need frequent updates. The next thing that we have is state. So state is the root of all evil. This is what Vipul says, and it makes pretty much sense, since if, as I said, if you have a lot of state in your component, a lot of updates are going to happen in your app. Think about a single page app. Have you guys used Circle CI or Travis or something like that?
Objection.
So those apps, consider them like they are a single page app, and there are lots of updates happening. Like when my build is running, I have the page being updating a lot. So not having a lot of state helps a lot, so that the updates that are there are less frequent, and your page is going to be pretty faster. Still, you need to have some kind of state to change that's still going to happen in your object, in your component. So that's something that is handled by a state. So here is an example for that. So here's a simple component which is just showing a simple clock tick. It creates a simple app, and it is using this.state, similar to this.props, which was for properties passed from outside. You use this.state for accessing values which you can manipulate. And what this component is doing is, it is initializing the state by saying React has this method called get initial state, and it just picks up the values from the date, and it is setting those values to the current state. Here I'm using one of the React's lifecycle methods. It has lots of lifecycle methods like mounting, unmounting, and all those. And here I'm using a simple method which is just going to call the clock tick every second, and it is going to update the state every particular second. You can think about this in terms of your apps. You have some app, and there's some server-side event which fires and updates your particular component, and this is pretty straightforward. Dynamic components. So now you have simple components, and you want to compose all these components together and create components on the fly. So this is something that you'll be creating using dynamic components. So in the previous case, if you have noticed, we used something like app/ when we are doing the render, this one. So since you're using JSX, and it allows arbitrary HTML elements to be rendered from within your app, it also allows arbitrary other components to be used within your render, within your render methods. So here I am creating a simple list. It's a simple unlisted list. and I've created a component for li tag, which is just going to take the value in props, there is data, and just display a simple li tag. I have a list component over here, which is taking an array. This is what you see over here. This dot props dot data. So this is going to be an array, and I'm looping over all the elements in that array. I passed a function over here which just loops over those components, and then on the fly it's creating another list component. So it's creating multiple li tags, and this list I'm going to be using from another component where I'm passing what I need to display. So the title you see over here, the name is displayed over here, and the list is created on the fly using this array. So let's say I want to display mango, because I think that's the specialty in Philippines, and it's just going to update on the fly. And it supports ES6. So from beginning itself, React has embraced ES6, which is the current version. I don't know how many of you use JavaScript a lot. The current version is ES5, and the next version will be ES6, and later version ES7. So ES6, React has been embracing ES6 from the beginning, and it allows lots of amazing concepts from ES6. So this is just a brush of all those concepts that which are made available to use. So starting from, like, if you start using React, you'll be made available with the class syntax. You can start using classes in JavaScript, which is something new, pretty exciting to compartmentalize your. So right now, JavaScript is pretty functional, and you have to define modules. So instead of that, you can start using classes. And here it is just extending from React component, and instead of the get initial state that we saw, we are using the constructor from your JavaScript class. And again, the same render method, and you're just rendering that particular method. This is pretty exciting because you're going to clean up a lot of your code. Another features are something that you just saw was classes. Another feature is const and let. So these are something like defining your constants. Let are, you can think about a variable handling for scoping from your vals. So these are similar like vals, but they have special handling for scopes of your variable. Fat arrows, if you have used CoffeeScript, you must have seen that it provides you with fat arrow for auto binding of your methods. So ES6 has the fat arrow, and React supports that. So all your methods are auto bound to, and in your method you are made available with the keyword this. Splat operator, this is pretty exciting because now you can use the splat operator is this 3 dots. So you can start using the splat similar to Ruby, and the power that this gives you is you can start using keyword arguments in JavaScript, which is pretty amazing. And much more, but let's get back to React. So with this initial introduction, you can go ahead and start creating your components. That's just about it. That's about React. You have a simple component. You can create another components from one component, and pretty simple and straightforward. You have a render method which renders something. Next thing that we have is Rails, and how you can start using Rails, React and Rails. So for using that, the straightforward way is start using it by using React Rails. In your application file, in your gem file, you just require React Rails. In your application.js file, you use React. You import React Vue.js, which is an unobtrusive JavaScript for React, which is helpful for providing support for turbo links out of the box, so you can your component mount and mount on the fly. So after this is set up, you can ask React from within Rails to start using ES6. So from within your Rails app itself, you can start using React 6 by configuring it to say that start using Harmony, which is the latest JavaScript version. If you don't want to use React, there's another link which is Rocket's ES6. You can start using those in your Rails app today itself, or if you want to try and explore ES6 in your Rails app. React also supports CoffeeScript, so if you want to use CoffeeScript, you can straight away create simple classes from CoffeeScript. The syntax is the same. React.create class, and you just have to have the render method. Pretty much straightforward with CoffeeScript. The only thing that is not good is having, since CoffeeScript can't escape JSX, you need to define your components using backdoors. And after you are defined with your component, you use React component, which is a helper method to start using those components in your views. So in your ERB files, you'll say render my React component, which is hello message, and you pass parameters over here. Now these parameters can be simple parameters, or they can be your active record objects. So these are made available as your JavaScript objects in your views, which is pretty amazing. And this is how it renders right now. It will create a data prop, and that will be picked up by React. So if you notice in the previous one, it is not creating the HTML version. It is not rendering the HTML content. Now this can be a bit of a concern if, in terms of say SEO, you would like to have server side rendering of your components. So this is something that is allowed by saying pre-rendered true in your components. So you just pass pre-rendered true, and it will start rendering from your server on your server itself, and then display it in your apps. So one good example for this is if I have another useful thing about this is if you have a browser which doesn't support JavaScript, you still are not losing anything since your components are not going to depend on JavaScript. They're going to be pre-rendered. So this is pretty much it. You have your React components. You're going to define those React components in your asset pipeline, and I just have 10 minutes. Okay, and you can go ahead and start using those. So here is an example of how a simple app. So this is an internal app that we use called as InstaPusher, and what it does is it's a simple CI, and after every successful run, it just deploys to Vipul. So this is the Rails app, and over here, it's pretty slow. So here, So on this page, this part that you see, so something like Travis Circle CI, this part that you see, this is generated on the fly. It's fetching data from the server, and this is you can call it as a command row, and these are the activities which are done. And if I deploy this is just going to deploy to Heroku. So the part that you see over here, this is all React. Now this is pretty amazing because I don't need to handle I don't need to go and handle like on fetching of this data, go and update the DOM. I'm just updating. So I have this update method over here which is fetching data, and it is just setting the data for that particular component. I don't need to manipulate the DOM. I'm just setting it on my component, and React takes care of updating the DOM. So how do you use React in Rails? Is you just need to include in your gem file, and you have this setup for components in your application file. You just include it, and your components you will lie in your component hierarchy, and you just start using them, saying React component for rendering. Alright. So that's about it. How you basically use, pretty straightforward to use in your Rails app. The next thing that I want to discuss is other ways for using React in your Rails apps. So if you want to use some other things which are not part of React, so React Rails will only allow you for using React JS, but there are lots of other things like you would like to use Babel or other modules which are not part of, which are not made available from Sprockets. You can start using React Rails from Browserify. Since I'm out of time, I'll share an example later. I'll share the link for how you can check out that example later. Another good way, which is very useful right now and which we are trying to use, is using React Rails with webpack. So similar to Browserify, which is kind of an alternative for asset pipeline, which is used for compiling your assets. There's another way which is webpack. This is something that we're using right now in our apps. And what it does is it allows you to compartmentalize all your assets, and those are compiled and that gets served from your asset pipeline right now from under React. One exciting thing that allows One exciting thing that allows us to do from webpack is using React hot loader. So I have this app over here. Alright. So I have this app over here which is a simple Rails app, and I'm using webpack. So from my webpack I will be running a webpack server, dev server, and what it does is it watches all the files which are being all the files, JavaScript files, and if there is any change in the file, it will create a new pack for serving. And on my web page, if I go over here, right, on my web page, so this is the React component that you see, and on my web page, if I change my code even a bit, so like I've saved this file, and I can show it, but you need to believe it. I did not do a refresh, and the component loaded on the fly. So this is pretty amazing because it helps to kind of perform live loading, reloading of your code, and you don't need to depend on live loader or something like that. Finally, coming to models. So you would like to have control over which is an important part of your Rails apps, is having control of what you're going to use for data in your components. So you can use React along with Backbone. The link is not working. I don't think so. To do MVC, the framework, I don't know. It's not being hit up in Philippines since I got here. So you can use React with Backbone. Pretty much, a lot of people use Backbone and React. Or you can use something called as Flux. So Flux is kind of an architecture which Facebook uses for defining of your data. Important thing over here is it follows unidirectional flow of your data. So it doesn't have the concept of MVC, that is a controller trying to control what it needs to display. So every single action is just going to be emitted to what are called as stores. Stores are going to consist of your data. So stores will just change your data. They won't perform any actions, and your views are going to listen to these particular stores, and if there is any change in your particular data, it will go ahead and update your view. Another way is using something called as GraphQL and Relay. This is just being announced by Facebook. And what you would do in your Rails apps is define endpoints on your server for getting and fetching and updating of your data. The relay store, again, it's kind of a store for handling of your data. It will just hit those endpoints for getting and updating the data. And again, these will be pushed to your components for updating of your data. So React works pretty well with lots of third-party libraries, and this is one of the most important things of us using React. We have a lot of apps that we have a lot of customers, and we have a lot of apps, and they use a lot of different things like Angular, Ember, or other things. We can't just go ahead and say that, okay, we need 2 months for going and changing our app to React. We can, from day one itself, use React in the existing applications. Like you can use React as the view part for Angular, Ember, Backbone, or jQuery or any other framework. Important thing over here is it allows you to do React iterative development. So you don't need to have a lot of you don't need to spend a lot of time for changing your apps. And coming to an end, this is something pretty exciting which is just recently launched. So in terms of when you're doing a web app, this is something that we struggled last year, is trying to do hybrid apps and trying to support your same app for allowing you to do web app as well as your mobile apps. So React Native in that sense is pretty exciting for us, since when you're doing your web app development using React, you're also made freely available with lots of components which you can use for building your native iOS components. And mind that is native components. So here's an example, quick example of React Native. I think that's loaded. Yeah. So this is an app. Alright. So this is the app that we have over here. It's a native app, and what it is doing is it's running React in the background and it's fetching data from IMDb. So let's see the code for that. Yeah. So this is the JS code for that. Pretty straightforward. It's fetching data from here and just displaying over here. And the most important part to see is if I change the code, I don't need to rebuild my app. I just say refresh and I just go to live reload of my code from within your simulator, which is pretty exciting. With that, I think I've done with all my demos. On the web, you can check out all these links. The first one is videos. We create a lot of screencasts, so you can, if you're interested more, you can go ahead and check out on videos.binary. There's a React web series, React.js for taking a look at React.js, native.react, which is just recently released before the conference. Example for React with Browserify, and the first demo that I showed you about comparison of React Ember and Angular. And that's it. Thanks.